My name is Chris, and when I was 6 years old, I was diagnosed with a rare and life-threatening disorder called Hunter's, or MPS II. Now, Hunter's didn't actually run in my family, and no one ever even heard of it. Growing up with Hunter's always seemed pretty normal to me. I mean, as far back as I could remember, I always knew I had it, so I didn't really have a life before it. But there was one question that always lingered in my mind. I always wanted to know how other people dealt with it. How did people affected with the disorder deal with it? How did their families deal with it? How did their siblings deal with it? So to answer this question, this past summer, I spent 90 days on the road, drove approximately 15,000 miles, and stayed with about 40 different families. Now, each of these families had one person, or at least one person in that family, that had an MPS disorder. When I was 9, when did you guys first start to notice that there was something not quite right?
When he was probably around 2, I started suspecting that he just wasn't learning properly. Like he didn't know all of his, numbers and colors and things like his sister had. And I would go to the pediatrician and she thought it was because of a hearing deficit. He wasn't even speaking full sentences, things like that. So we went in to go see a geneticist when Will was 4.
And they instantly knew?
He suspected MPS. He, got his medical journal out and opened it up and told us to go have a series of x-rays done. And
so they knew pretty much instantly that it was an MPS?
I think that he did feel that it was an MPS. But
do you remember when you guys first got the diagnosis?
Sure. Mm-hmm. He called Lewis, actually.
Yeah.
I think a man prefers to call a man than a woman with something like that.
Lewis, do you want to?
I was out on the job and doing work at the City Federal Building. They were turning into lofts, and they called. Yeah, I'll never forget that.
He didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
And so I got on the computer, and I actually found the Seidman's website. Ben Seidman, they had a foundation, and their son looked exactly like Will. So when I saw his picture, I already knew that Will had it. But he likes to call it hope. I even put it on our website that I call it denial, but he calls it hope. Okay, we know he has this. How can we cure this? What are the steps and the processes? And there's not any. So
yeah, that is.
I mean, that's when the cold, hard realization comes through when you find out there's not a treatment for Sanfilippo. So that's probably the most devastating thing. At least, not that cancer's fun or not that Hunter's fun, but if your child's diagnosed with most things, you're given a treatment plan. It might not be the best one. They might have a 50% chance of living, but at least they say these are the steps and the process we'll take to try to help your child, and there's not one. He told us to take our son home and love him. And I said, well, we already do that. What else can we do?
So now, how has it been living with Will compared to Nicole, who was a normal?
He'll keep you busy, that's for sure. But we have a lot of fun.
Of course, you've been here and you've seen how it is. Will loves and kisses and hugs and dances and gallops, and he's happy. We're at a happy place. The fear is the future, but today is good. I don't know many other 9-year-old little boys who kiss their mama and gallop around and are as happy as he is. But his health regresses more. We're at a really good place right now. So.
Have you guys learned any lessons from Will? Like any life lessons or?
Yeah, probably just to live for today and to make each day the happiest you can.
Mm-hmm.
It either breaks them
or
makes them so much stronger.
I do think that, but I do think the siblings, as a whole, I've never heard anybody say that their child has been adversely affected. Like you said, it helps them to grow and be more mature earlier, to understand and have empathies that typical children don't have.
I heard a lot of fathers say that they feel like at first, when they're first given a diagnosis, they feel like maybe they failed the child because everyone thinks that the father's purpose is to protect the child.
Right. I don't know that I felt like I failed, but I really didn't understand, how can this be? How can this happen? And of course, I guess everybody wonders that. But, it gets easier, and you realize, what you're dealing with, and go from there and just enjoy him,
Facing each day, knowing that you're raising a child that's regressing in skills instead of gaining in skills. One of my friends, when he was diagnosed, said, well, my child could get killed in a car accident, but it's just not quite the same. Understanding the inevitable could happen at any moment and knowing what's happening. Of course, when you go shopping or somewhere and he's yelling out and acting like a child with Sanfilippo syndrome, you get looks, but
he's so happy.
I don't care. I just yell back. I yell too. So we're yelling in unison, and that might be why we get more looks. It's just not really, it's a process of acceptance too. And like I said, I think I broke for a few months. It's just, you have to tell people to take each day at a time and to don't think too far ahead. Don't think to what the future holds. Just live for today. But that's also a process that you have to get through. Having a diagnosis like it is, like a mourning process. People say there's 5 steps or 6 steps. You kind of go through a grieving process, and you go through a anger process, and then an acceptance. And people just have to get there in their own way, in their own time. The only advice to give is to just take it a day at a time. And if today wasn't the best day, tomorrow may be better. So,
do you feel that there's any kind of support that's important to have?
Well, I think, of course, with each other is the most important thing. There again, not being able to live a typical life is that as well. We don't really have the relationship we used to have either, but it takes me to make it work, and it takes him to make it work. So you have to support one another. You can't, lose each other in the situation.
I don't think so.
Chris is wonderful.
Yeah, my buddy Chris.
That's BS right there. How did they figure it out? Like, how many doctors did you have to go to?
He was sick, just kind of general sickness, and we brought him to his pediatrician, who, while checking him out, noticed that his liver and spleen felt big. So he sent us to a hematologist, and we went to the hematologist, and as soon as we walked into the hematologist looked at us, looked at him, and said, you need to go to a geneticist. Before he ever put a finger on him, he just knew it,
Okay.
And we didn't know. We understand at that point why.
Ryan's the only child, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Was it because of Hunters that you decided not to try again, or?
No, not really. I think when we found out with him, he was 4 or 5 years old, and I think at that point we were kind of already past starting over with another baby anyway. But that definitely was the icing that we weren't going to, but we had no intent.
And I know that you're in the firefighting.
Yeah.
I don't know what EMT.
I'm a lieutenant. I'm a fire lieutenant, and I'm also a paramedic. On top
Okay.
of it, so.
And I know that those are usually very close-knit
Yeah.
group of people.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you found that they're very supportive?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. My close friends at work, they're aware of, and as you know, they did do a fundraiser. That was probably at least 5 years ago. They did a haunted house, and they put it together when we were really kind of having trouble with co-pays and all that type of stuff. And they were able to raise a decent little amount of money that helped out a lot. So, yes, they're very supportive. So.
You and I, we've known each other for many years. Correct?
Oh yeah, many.
Well, not many.
We go way back.
Like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to, add this guy and, meet him. He's in his, at the time, early 20s, I believe. And
Yeah,
and
not that old.
What's that?
Not that old.
You're not that young either.
I know. Damn it.
So that was how we met you, and then we added you, and you thought I was going to stick you in the trunk and kidnap you.
That was a funny story.
It was a good story.
I remember our first conversation, we spoke about possibly homeschooling Ryan,
Yes.
and I am very adamant against doing that, and you ended up listening to me.
I did. We did.
And how's that going?
What do you think, buddy?
School.
How about going to public school and not being homeschooled?
I love it. I love school. I love high school. I got so many friends, and it's really cool.
Much better than sitting behind a computer desk and
Yeah,
doing your stuff here at the house and no interaction. So
definitely.
Yeah, you're welcome.
yeah, thank Dutch. Well, I think it puts things in perspective. People take things for granted. A lot of people, we have lots of friends and people that have children, and everybody feels they're entitled to have healthy children, and that's not really the case. I think you're lucky if you have a child that's completely healthy. But at the same token, like we always tell him, there's things that are a lot worse that are out there, and
Absolutely.
it kind of puts everything in perspective after a while, So, and he's able to do all kinds of stuff, and
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it is, it's just the reality of how we live.
well, we had a bad experience, and I know we talked before about that, but basically that initial geneticist that we had told us what he had, but wouldn't tell us anything about it. In fact, he said we have to send it off the test, but this is what he has, and told us don't look it up, I don't want you to go and research it or anything. And we were kind of like, wait a minute, you tell us our child has this disorder, but don't look it up. So we said yeah, and of course we went home and we looked it up.
And you're going back 11 years ago too, so there wasn't that much stuff on the internet about it like there is now at all.
Now, Ryan, let's ask you the same question. If you were asked to speak to, I don't know, families or even a person if they're old enough that would just diagnose, what would you say?
I would probably say, there's nothing you can do. You're never gonna be normal, so you're special. So don't think, I'm never gonna get to do this. I'm never gonna get to do that. Be thankful for what you can do. And like my parents were saying, there's so much worse things out there, and just be thankful. You're mentally there, and you can do, normal things. Go to school, learn, all that stuff.
Yep.
Good answer, buddy. I like that.
Because it could be worse, right?
I'm Gene Logan, Rhianna's father.
And I'm Cynthia Logan, Rhianna's mom.
And Rhianna is your daughter, obviously. How old is she? What form of MPS does she have?
She's going to be 20 in October 15th this year.
And she has Sanfilippo B.
Sanfilippo B. At what age did you guys start to see that there was something wrong?
Oh, we didn't see that anything was wrong before she was diagnosed. She was diagnosed early at 2.5.
Actually, the ENT was the one who picked up on it.
Who was it?
The ENT. The throat doctor was the one who picked up on it. He kind of knew. He sent us to the geneticist. And
Or did you know what was the reason for that? What did he tell you were the signs?
She had a slight hearing loss that he diagnosed, and when he suggested genetics, it was because of her features, because she had a little bigger forehead and a little thicker eyebrows, and that's all he told me.
Okay. And when you went to the geneticist, she was 2?
2.5.
Two. And what did he say when he first saw you guys?
Do you remember?
what he said to us? Something about winning the lottery.
He said we should play the lottery. We stood a better chance of winning the lottery than getting. Actually, he clinically diagnosed her with hurlers, and took a skin biopsy. Told us it would be back in, I think, 3 weeks or 6 weeks.
6 weeks, I thought.
So we headed off to a conference to find out about bone marrow transplant, because at the time they were doing that for hurlers. And came back, got on the plane, turned to Jean and said, "It's not so bad. We could have Sanfilippo," because we had seen the kids with Sanfilippo and the behavior issues.
Yeah.
And the hurler kids were all small and fairly manageable and very obviously ill, where the Sanfilippos aren't so obvious. And then came home, and they changed the diagnosis to Sanfilippo.
You guys have said neither one of you have this in your family ever, right?
Right.
Have you both been tested, or and you're both carriers? Okay. Now could you, I guess, step back to when you were first told? What were you feeling? And I mean, I'm sure it was hard, but can you just explain it and elaborate? I mean, originally you first thought it was MPSII, and you said it could have been worse.
I said it was like getting hit by a freight train twice, is what I said.
And me, I just, I guess I was in denial for a while.
What about?
Me, I was just in shock, because I had never heard of it. I had no clue that when the ENT sent us there, it would be anything of a terminal nature or, as catastrophic as it was.
You know, we thought maybe, she needed hearing aids or, something small, not telling us that our little girl only had 3 years to live.
And that's what you guys were told?
5 to 8 was with the hurler diagnosis, they told us 5 to 8. And with the Sanfilippo diagnosis, they told us by the time she hit her teenage years, by the time she was 13, her behavior would be so bad that she'd have to be institutionalized, and she would not know who we were. That's what we were told.
And looking back, has it been like that?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, I refused to let it be like that. I was not going to buy into the diagnosis. I said, I'm going to do whatever I can. Knowing we couldn't cure her, my choice was, we walked out, I said, okay, all we can do is make her comfortable and happy. And it sounds like a small task, but it's an enormous task. And then I decided when, once we got our feet on the ground, that we were going to give her a normal life. We weren't going to buy into she's not going to sleep and she's going to be poorly behaved and she's going to be, we decided she was going to be what we could help her be. And it was nothing like that.
So now, if you guys were asked to speak to newly diagnosed people, newly parents, whether they were diagnosed with Sanfilippo, Huli Wali Walla, whatever, or what would you say to them? Like, if they were diagnosed with any severe disorder.
Take the spend the time with them when they're younger, before they, well, like with somebody with Sanfilippo, because you can do so much more with them when they're younger. Just be with them.
I would tell them to not believe what they hear, to take it on and look for solutions and walk a different path, because Rhianna did very, very well for the diagnosis she had, by sort of not labeling her, not, like she had a lot of friends that were typical peer friends, because I refused to put her over here with the special needs kids. I put her over here with everybody. And she was with the special needs and she was with the regular kids, and we tried to give her a normal life, and that made a difference. Instead of like, oh, she's not, she's only going to walk for a few years and have her in a chair, and we had her going. And I think it made a difference.
Okay. Now, is there anything else you two would want to share or say or add?
Maybe find something that you can do as a family. I think that really helped us out. Something that, we did the horseback riding meant a lot to her and to us as a family. Someplace we could go with her. She loved to go. Really enjoyed it.
Okay. At what age did you realize there was something going on with him, or?
Right around 18 months, I started noticing some regression on some of the developmental skills he had had prior to that.
Okay, and then you went into testing, I'm assuming?
We actually just started with basically talking to his primary care doctor, trying to kind of get some leadway there, and he basically just said it was general delays and that I was overreacting. And then we kind of, because I was persistent and knew that something wasn't right, we ended up seeing some psychiatrists and, oh goodness, I don't even know how many different specialists, which led us to a geneticist when he was 6.
Okay, and they finally figured out.
Just before he turned 7, they finally figured out what the cause was.
Do you recall your first reaction?
Shock. Complete and total shock. We knew that he had some sort of a genetic condition. They had thrown around a lot of different names, and we had researched some of those, and we knew that something probably not great was coming from all of this, but when they told us it was terminal and untreatable, it pretty much was just a complete system shock.
Did they use that term, terminal?
They did tell us he was terminal.
So you had a bad experience, I guess? When you
Yeah, it was pretty bad. The doctor that told us had no bedside manner. He pretty much just walked into the room, said, "This is the diagnosis. He's terminal. He most likely won't see his 14th birthday," and that was pretty much the sum of our diagnosis experience.
I'm sorry about that. And tomorrow was a big 14th birthday party, right?
Yes, we're
Yeah, so he beat the doctor.
We did.
You should go back to the doctor and be like, "Hey, look, how do you think it's affected them?"
I think it's been hard for them on a lot of levels. I think they've had to sacrifice a lot for the sake of their brother, and it's definitely made them stronger than most kids their age and more resilient. They tend to bounce back from tragic events in their lives a lot quicker than I think most kids would. They possess an unsurreal amount of compassion and empathy and kindness towards others, and we were just talking about it earlier. They don't see a disability when they look at people in general. They just see people, and they're always the first kids to help whenever somebody in a wheelchair, something can't open a door. And they're just amazing. For everything that they've had to sacrifice and everything that they've been through in 12 and 10 years that most kids never even could imagine facing. I couldn't imagine them turning out any better. Not to say it hasn't had its bad side effects. We've had some conversations where they've definitely felt like they were on the back burner from time to time because Henry's needs have been, they've been really overwhelming as a parent to try and meet everybody's needs.
Do you feel that you have to take some attention away from the others?
Without a doubt. There are times that I haven't been able to be where I wanted to be for events for them because Henry was not well, or because it was a time of year during like cold and flu season where we don't take him out for risk of him getting one of those viruses. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I definitely think that it's caused me to have to prioritize, or his needs greater than theirs, which is, in my opinion, a really crappy position to be as a parent, because you want your kids to feel like they're as important to you as, your other children. And I think, unfortunately, that's kind of one of the pitfalls of being in a situation like this, is it's impossible for them to never feel like they've been put on the back burner. So from the time that they've been able to reach him in his bed and in his chair, I have had them hands-on taking care of him. Haley can change his trach tube out all by herself with no trouble if the situation were to arise. They both can give all of his medications, operate his feeding tube, all of his suction equipment, his nebulizers. I mean, they pretty much could care for him as good as I can if the situation called for them to need to do so. So they're pretty amazing.
But you're not the biological father, correct?
That's correct.
About how long have you been in the picture?
For about, what would you say, dear, over 5 years now?
7 years.
We've been,
Wow.
well, you could say that it hasn't felt like it's been an eternity, I guess you could say.
7 years.
7 years.
I mean, obviously there was courtship, like a courting period, and eventually you came and you met the children.
Yes.
And that was, I'm assuming, after you guys were seeing each other for a period. Now, how did you react to meeting all the three of them?
Nervous, obviously, but the very first time that my wife and I interacted, she was very upfront. I mean, I knew she had kids because we went through online through a dating site. So I knew she had kids, but one thing she was very upfront. First email she ever sent me, I have a special needs son. I'm just like, okay, that's fine. I mean, I think back on it now, I didn't really think anything negative about it at all.
I will applaud you on that. I don't think I've met any other who had to deal with that situation. Even my own stepfather, we didn't even know I had anything. And then by the time they found out I had something, his son with my mother was born. So he didn't even know what he was getting into. And you obviously knew.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, I didn't know the full details about his
I told
illness
you he
and
was
whatnot.
terminal, though. You knew that, that
Yeah,
much.
it was terminal. I mean, I didn't know all the details, obviously, but... And once I found out and after I met him, I was completely easy with it. No problems. And I just think back, it's just God's timing. It truly is. Because when my wife said when we first met, he had just started to calm down in the stage of his San Filippo, which I remember the very first time I came in and saw him, though. Like I said, I was in complete peace with it. I was in complete peace with him, and like I said, all I have to do is I just have to thank God for it, because it was all him, really.
He decided he was going to try to be helpful and not wake me up to change a diaper because Henry needed changed.
My favorite story.
And I got up the next morning and went to change Henry's diaper, and bless his heart, he had never changed a diaper before in his life, I don't think. And poor Henry's laying in a backwards diaper. The plastic was against his skin. It was backwards and inside out, but I couldn't be mad because the fact that he was even willing to try made my day.
Have you learned anything from Henry or anything you want to mention?
Yes, he's taught me about strength. And we talked about this as a family one evening. He is stronger than anyone I can ever think of. He truly is. No, he cannot walk. He cannot talk. He couldn't defend himself if someone were to attack him, but in every other sense of the word, he is the strongest person I know. And you just think back to the things you're going through. Well, this kid, he is fighting for every breath of every day. And he wants to live. And you can tell that just from looking at him. So, he's a great inspiration to me.
Henry's my hero. Like, there's just no other way to sum up how strongly he's touched my life, as he truly is my hero. He has saved my life. I mean, and I know it's completely absurd to even think that's possible, but he's enlightened me into, not taking things for granted and cherishing the little moments and living life every single day like it could be your last, because really none of it's promised. Tomorrow is not any guarantee that we're going to have it. Who knows if tomorrow one of us is in a car accident, and life is just very precious, and he has truly made me realize that.
What words of advice would you give to them?
Breathe. Just one breath at a time, because you can get so wrapped up in the chaos of the first stages, and then the medical intervention and all of that goes into the later stages of the disease and watching your child deteriorate, and it can get so overwhelming, and you can completely miss the entire life. And I've really only just learned this the last couple of years myself, and really tried to implement it into my own life, is just breathe, pay attention to the moments, because they're fleeting and you cannot get a single one of them back. The dishes can wait, the laundry can wait, all of that, it's not important. Just treasure each and every moment that you have with not only your MPS child, but if you have other children, that's the advice I share with all of my new parent friends, is enjoy every single moment and just take it one breath at a time.
Say. Aww, smooches.
Yeah, they look so sweet.
Say
It's very
goodbye.
deceptive.
You enjoyed watching my journey as much as I enjoyed going on it. And I hope you guys took something away from it. I can tell you that the one thing I took away from it was, no matter who you are or where you come from, life will give you a challenge. Now, it's your job to decide how you're going to deal with that challenge. You can either overcome it or back down. Now, most of the people in this video, I personally believe, did rise to the occasion. So, until next time, have a lovely day.
What you gotta do to keep from going insane. It's not about losing the weight. It's not about making the grade. It's about creating your own fate through the love you cultivate. It's not about trying to be perfect. It's not just scratching the surface. You have a beauty so much more than just skin deep. Don't care what people say, just follow your own way. It's not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. It's not about hit or miss, it's about following your bliss. It's about being brave. Your own life you gotta save from drowning in the sea of mediocrity. Don't let them tell you who to be, only you can set you free. It's about planting the seed, it's about being who you need instead of throwing away the key. Being open to receive, no matter what's your age. If you're black, white, straight or gay, there's no more time for shame, 'cause you're dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. We're dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. Smoke from a burning flame. With every dream there comes a haze. Gotta have some faith when you're dancing in the rain. These words that I proclaim, they might sound cliche, but you gotta do what you gotta do, 'cause you're dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. Just dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. You have a dream, you best believe it. It's only you who can achieve it. If at first you don't receive it, pick yourself up, don't stop believing. When you're scared and feeling cheated, just remember you are needed. How can they say we've been defeated? We're here together, dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. Just dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. Dancing in the rain.